To start this off, yes, this is a slideshow. Get over it. If you don't want to watch a slideshow, if you want to see better edited video, this is not the video for you. Just go somewhere else. It's limited editing, and also I jumbled my words, so if you're not interested, then click off. And if you are interested, well, join me. Let's go. Throughout my years as a Sonic fan, I've often thought about what my dream Sonic game would be. This is somewhat of a difficult task as there are so many different types of Sonic games that I like and would love to see brought back and built upon. From Sonic Heroes to Sonic Mania to Sonic Rush, I could go on and on. One gameplay type that has been elusive to Sonic fans for almost 20 years now is the Sonic Adventure style. The last game to have the gameplay and structure of an adventure game was Sonic 06, which came out in, 2006. However, we haven't seen an entry in the actual Sonic Adventure series since 2001's Sonic Adventure 2. 99% of Sonic fans will tell you that they want to see Sonic Adventure 3. I'm one of them. However, I'm also a realist. Sorry guys, we will never see Adventure 3. It's 10 years too late. That being said, I think it's very possible for us to get adventure-like gameplay in the next Sonic game. Sonic Frontiers brought back the Spin Dash, and Sonic Team is well aware of Sonic's fans' desires to return to the adventure formula. I think it's very likely the next 3D Sonic game will be a sequel to Frontiers. Although this is a video about my dream Sonic game, I want to have somewhat realistic expectations, so I've elected to come up with a happy medium between Sonic Frontiers and adventure gameplay. What do I mean by that? I'll get into more detail about that later, but first, what would I call this hypothetical Sonic game? Well, since it's a sequel to Sonic Frontiers, I wanted something that captures a similar feeling. To me, the name Frontiers evokes a feeling of discovery and the unknown. I think Sonic Destinations gives off a similar vibe. Sonic is a character who is constantly on the move, and so his destination is always changing. For my pitch, I want to have a game that is both building off what came before, but also adds new concepts and moves the series forward. So yeah, Sonic Destinations. Since I mentioned this is a sequel to Sonic Frontiers and the adventure formula, you're probably wondering who will be playable this time around. Whenever I think about my dream Adventure 3, or any Sonic game for that matter, I always end up adding so many characters. I want to play as Silver, and Blaze, and Omega, and Cream, and Jet, and Mighty. However, again this time around I'm trying to be realistic. Sonic games are fast-paced platformers, which means the more you add, there are more opportunities for jank. Because of this, I want to limit it to a simple 3. Sonic, Knuckles, and Shadow. Arguably the 3 most popular Sonic characters as is, so it's already fairly likely for them to be playable. However, they won't be alone. Alongside each character will be a partner who follows them around and can interact with the levels to a limited extent. Again, I'll get into that more in the gameplay portion. Accompanying our 3 main characters are Tails, Amy, and Sage respectively. So what reason do our trio of heroes have for coming together? I envision the game to have 3 different stories that you can easily switch between. Since the incident on the Starfall Islands, Tails has been working with the technology of the Ancients. Maybe he gets some sort of signal that leads him and Sonic to venture to a new island to find where the signal originated from. Sonic and Tails would be the ones interacting with the main villains the most. For Knuckles and Amy, I'd have Knuckles investigating the connection to his Echidna ancestors. Perhaps Amy tipped him off about it. However, I kinda like the idea of Amy seeing the tornado flying towards the island and wanting to see where Sonic is going. So she follows it and just happens to run into Knuckles. For Shadow, since Sega has been wanting to pay more attention to the canon, I figure Shadow could be dealing with the ramifications of a previous Sonic game, that game being Sonic Forces. Despite the problems I have with that game and its story, I think it would be cool to explore the impacts the game had on this world. Eggman did take over the world after all. With that being said, Shadow is here because he's hunting down Shadow androids. Eggman utilized them during the war, and since then, pockets of them still exist out in the world. The damage they have done and continue to do has given Shadow a bad reputation, and so he's been working to destroy them all. Since Shadow will be interacting with the Ancients' technology, maybe we could connect it somehow to the fact that Chaos Island appears in Shadow Generations despite him never actually being there. Just a thought. Anyway, while he's on the island, he runs into Sage, who is scanning the tech for Eggman. This leads to an uneasy alliance between the two of them to figure out what's going on. While each of the characters' stories are happening, I'd like there to be an ongoing story about some of the descendants of the original inhabitants of the island. These would be the main villains of the game. The island they live on has since been inhabited by various groups and has become popular with tourists. This group of characters want to re-establish the glory of their people by utilizing the technology that the Ancient left to attack and scare away the new inhabitants. This story will be important for Knuckles, as he encounters information that leads him to believe that the group of Echidnas who had lived on the island in the past also did bad things like the Knuckles clan. Knuckles would later find out that while the Echidna tribe had made mistakes, they ultimately rallied with their neighbors to oppose the villainous tribe in the past to stop them from conquering all the nearby peoples. Towards the end of the game, the villains will be about to summon an ancient titan to help with their goals. However, in the last minute, the activation key is stolen by none other than Dr. Eggman, who reveals he has already modified the titan with his own tech. This is somewhat of a subversion of most 3D Sonic games, which start with Eggman as the main threat, who is then thwarted in the last minute by the true main villain of the game. From here, you get to choose which character you want to go super and fight against the Mad Doctor. Once he's defeated, maybe the villainous inhabitants will see the error of their ways, or maybe they'll just die, or be arrested. I don't know. I kinda like having them stay as villains because the vast majority of new Sonic characters who start as villains or rivals end up becoming good guys in the end. So here's the thing about gameplay. When I say I want the game to have a mix of adventure and Frontiers gameplay, I simultaneously do and don't really know what I'm talking about. But I'm going to try to explain it anyway. I want the game to have more of the M word. Say it with me, everyone. This game should require you to build momentum to go fast. However, just momentum isn't the only important piece of good 3D Sonic gameplay. When people talk about what's missing in most 3D Sonic games, they usually just say momentum. But the level design is just as important for the player to gain a solid flow. Many people complain about automation, which comes in the form of stage gimmicks and cinematic moments. Not that there isn't a place for any of it, but it should be used sparingly and allow people to choose whether or not they want to interact with it. In other words, the level design needs to be intentional and allow for player expression and experimentation. I'd recommend watching any video from Telekinestic Man. He explains it in much more depth and clarity than I ever could. However, just because I want the gameplay to take more from the Adventure series, doesn't mean I want to completely abandon what Frontiers established. I'd like to maintain the combat of Frontiers, with maybe some tweaks to make it more engaging, as well as the boost. Now hold up, if I'm bringing back adventure-style platforming, how on earth could the boost also be in the game? After all, why would I waste my time trying to build momentum when I can just hit the go fast button for the same result? 2 words, risk and reward. Or is that 3 words? Anyway, I think it should be much harder to acquire energy to fill the boost gauge, and the boost gauge should also double as energy that can be used in combat. Perhaps you only fill the boost gauge by defeating enemies. Therefore, the player has to decide whether or not they want to use the limited boost they have for fast traversal in the world and to reach platforms that otherwise require intentional building of momentum. Don't worry, fast travel points will still exist. Or do they want to use the boost to make combat easier? This gives the player a choice in how they want to approach the world. I hope I explained it in a way that makes sense. For how each character controls, I want one simple thing. I want them to be fun. I'm mixed in how much I'd want the game to focus on combat. I know a lot of people want the combat to be more in depth and don't want to just be doing the same thing over and over again. I definitely see where those people are coming from, and I would appreciate a more comprehensive combat system. I, on the other hand, would only play the game for 20 minutes at a time, so now I never really got bored with the gameplay loop. I do want the characters to have similar movesets with enough differences to make them unique, like how Shadow's homing attack is Chaos Control and Shadow Generations, stuff like that. Also, I would obviously give Knuckles his gliding and wall climbing abilities. For the partners, I think they should have limited movesets and can be controlled by player 2. It would be cool to have the option for them to provide support, either for certain tasks or in combat. Tails should be able to fly you up to places while having his tail swipe and ring bombs for combat. Amy could utilize a radar system akin to the adventure games in order to find collectibles and hidden objects like springs. Of course, she'd use her hammer for combat. Sage could help you by summoning badniks to overrun enemies, or she could stun and throw enemies. Like the sophistication of combat, I don't really care that much about stat upgrades. I was never really invested in it, but I know that people do like and care about it. I think it'd be cool to have stats that affect your gameplay with all 3 characters, and individual stats for each character. Like the adventure games, optional upgrades you can find and buy in the world would be great and make the game more replayable. In Sonic Frontiers, you travel to several different islands throughout the game. As I mentioned before, this game will take place in one open zone island. In Frontiers, I like how there are more traditional Sonic stages you played on each island. However, I, like everyone else, was fairly disappointed to see the same returning locations: Rain Hill, Chemical Plant, and Sky Sanctuary. I want to see new locations. I'm down for having a few themes that are repeated in multiple levels. I just want them to be new and more unique. I don't want to see typical platformer tropes like grass, ice, and lava worlds. Additionally, I think that the levels should be based on the locations of where you are in the game. Think of how Shadow Generations had Chaos Island as a level. Imagine if that level was one of the levels you actually played on Chaos Island in Frontiers. That's what I'd like to see. There could be variations on those levels based on the past, since the ancient tech seems to be able to capture past memories. Each level should have a few acts and a few missions. Some of these could take place in the same level layout, and some could have more unique level layouts. In terms of who plays what level and what mission, I think there could be both missions for all characters and character-specific missions. I think that most, if not all levels should be accessible to each character. However, certain levels and locations should start off for individual characters. What do I mean by that? Well, I imagine you'd start with a character and part of the island. After a certain point with each character, you can't progress without playing as the other two. Eventually, you'll be able to play the game as any of them and can seamlessly switch between all three. I don't know how this will affect how the game story plays out. That's for Sonic Team to decide. I've been talking for way too long, so here's a quick speedrun of everything else I want in the game. Bosses. I want the bosses to take place a mix of on the actual gameplay map and in battle arenas. Obviously, you're going to fight against the main bad guys. I want maybe have some fights in the past. Maybe have the metals, like you race and fight Metal Sonic, you fight against Metal Knuckles, you fight against the Shadow Androids. Obviously there's the Eggman final boss. I think there should be a boss rush, and you can choose whenever you want to play the bosses after you fight them. I think there should be NPCs all throughout the island. Some of them have optional missions, and talking to them may provide details and hints that make the experience easier. You can encounter the Rabbit family, like Cream, Vanilla, and Gemerald. Professor Victoria, put her in a game. Rouge, the Chaotix, Tangle and Jewel, the civilians that inhabit the island, some tourists on the island. There could be like missions on the actual open world, like for each character, that can like unlock moves, equipment, and collectibles. I want there to be a Chow Garden. Everyone wants there to be a Chow Garden. Just put a Chow Garden in this game. Come on. Maybe have some mobile game connection with it. Put Big in the game. I want to do some fishing with Big. I love fishing with Big in Frontiers. Let's do some more fishing. With the enemies, have them be like a mix of the Frontiers enemies, maybe some new variations of the old Frontiers enemies, and some new enemies in general. The music, I like what Frontiers had. I'd like to expand on it a little bit, maybe reintroduce like variety like the adventure games had. I also want the level themes to actually match the music. I love Flowing with Time, but it did not match Green Hill Zone, just stuff like that. Voice direction, I want there to be better voice direction. You know, the energy in Frontiers was just kind of off and weird to me. I think Sonic sounded weird. I want there to be an adventure mode where basically just takes all the cutscenes and all the levels and just puts them in one cohesive just stretch. You don't have to do any open world stuff in it. Just like give that as an option for people. Maybe have it be unlockable or a cheat code or DLC. I don't know. Don't care. The art style, I want it to be more Sonic-y. I want there to be checkerboard dirt and loop-de-doop loops, a mix of cartoony and realistic. I also want there to be more cohesion with the open world and the levels in general. I don't want there to be like pop-ins, and I want there to be less randomly placed floating objects everywhere. Progression, obviously, I want the levels to be blocked off in some way. The villains use tech maybe to block off parts of the level that you have to like unlock. Special zone, find Chaos Emeralds. I would love there to be special zone ring warps throughout the levels that you have to find, or at the world, not the levels, that you have to find. Collectibles, I want there to be, have collectibles hidden throughout the map and in the levels, and maybe some you can buy with rings, like red rings. There should be cards, there should be concept art and music, and maybe like emblems that you collect after each mission, I don't know. Costumes you can buy with rings, maybe some new costumes and some past from like old games, maybe some different models for each character, different colors to put on them, different clothing, different effects that the characters do, their models do. It'd be cool to have some sort of multiplayer besides like having the characters help you out. Maybe some sort of fighting or racing or like platforming or collecting. I don't know. Overall, I want this game to be better funded. I want this game to be awesome, like AAA game, like looks great. I want Sonic Team to actually have time and money to put so much care into it. I don't want any overly expensive pre-order bonuses or day one DLC. I'm sick of it. I'd be fine with the $60 or $70 price tag if the game is full of content and there's things to do and there's replayability. That's all I've got this time. Let me know what you think about my pitch and wants for the next 3D Sonic game. If you have any ideas of how you tweak my concept or have your own concept, let me know in the comments or your own follow-up video.